everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and there is even more news today. It is absolutely relentless. I don't quite know what to do with myself, but let's all just calm down for a second. Let's all compose ourselves and let's take a look at those lovely headlines. First of all, an anonymous WWE source has said that Nia Jax needs to be fired. Next up, a WWE veteran is set to appear on next week's Monday Night Raw. And finally, CM Punk and Booker T have had very critical words to say about a current ongoing WWE storyline. So first of all, let's talk about the ongoing Nia Jax situation. Obviously, this all stems from this week's Monday Night Raw, which was pre-taped, so reports of this incident emerged before the show itself. And if you haven't seen it, basically in a singles match with Kairi Sane, Nia pulls her out the ring, whips her into the ring steps, Kairi goes into the steps head first and suffered quite a nasty cut to her head. She was apparently bleeding, doctors were getting involved for quite a while to try and stop the bleeding, and apparently it took quite a while for the match to get back underway, but on the actual broadcast of Raw, they cut this down. There was just the step spot, they cut to the crowd, cut back, Nia got Kairi back in the ring and won the match. Now, when reports were going around of this incident, various different sources were at pains to say that we don't know at this point whose fault it was. We haven't seen the footage. That's exactly something that was echoed by Dave Meltzer of Wrestling Observer Radio, but on a more recent edition of his show, he and Bryan Alvarez conceded that yes, now having seen it, it's pretty clear that it was Nia Jax's fault. And not only that, but Bryan Alvarez read out a text message that he'd received from an anonymous source in WWE. He said, "I was obviously told not to mention this person's name, but they say 1000% Nia's fault. She needs to be effing fired. She is dangerous. Fire her before she cripples or kills somebody." Incredibly strong words there from whoever that WWE source is. Now, this is obviously a result of an accumulation of incidents involving Nia Jax and others getting injured or hurt in matches with her. And Nia seemed to maybe accidentally stoke the fires herself a short while ago when she revealed that she didn't like Ronda Rousey or the way that she dealt with Alexa Bliss in the ring. She thought that she handled Alexa far too heavily, and that's a criticism that has been applied to Nia Jax both before and since she said that. Now, having seen it myself, I think that also I should probably echo the sentiments of Meltzer and Alvarez in that this did seem to be Nia's fault. She was standing too close to the ring steps, she threw Kairi Sane too hard. Basically, Kairi did not have time to adjust herself along her path, I suppose, and get her hands up in time and just crashed into the ring steps. It was nasty stuff. Now, obviously, we can criticize Nia Jax for this, absolutely, but I do want to address a comment on a recent video I did about our perceived reluctance to criticize Nia Jax. Now, I don't think we've been shy about criticizing wrestlers when they are deserving of criticism. I think that the reason that this person has said this is because when we criticize Nia Jax, we criticize her in a wrestling sense. Because for whatever reason, Nia Jax is often the target of like a huge pylon whenever this sort of thing happens, which is fair enough if it's all about her abilities in the ring, but often it's not, is it? I've seen racist things said about Nia Jax, I've seen sexist things said about Nia Jax, I've seen personal things said about Nia Jax, about her appearance and what have you. And obviously we want to keep this about the wrestling and not personally attack somebody for things outside of our realm, I suppose. And it goes without saying that any sort of racist or sexist comments are just totally unnecessary and don't really have a place in this kind of sphere. So I don't really know what we're supposed to do. We're just giving you the facts and then a bit of our opinion, and that's just the way it goes. Next up, reports have emerged, especially from WrestlingInc.com, that suggest that Performance Center / NXT superstars who are kind of used as the crowd for these Raw tapings have been treated like children, apparently, and it seems like a bit of a fraught atmosphere. Wrestling Inc. points out that last Tuesday, before the Raw taping, Main Event and 205 Live were taped first, and then the Raw taping started at about 2 p.m. So the crowd, the fans, the Performance Center athletes, had been there for quite a while already. And remember, they're not allowed to sit down. They've got to stand and be enthusiastic all the way throughout. And apparently, the report goes on, someone backstage got on the house PA system and instructed the crowd to be more enthusiastic. One source described it as a parent talking down to a child. It has not been confirmed who the person was that was addressing the talent. Now, obviously, it's a big ask to get, people to stand around the ring and be enthusiastic for hours upon hours upon hours of taping on end. And the way I guess that you don't improve morale is by doing exactly this, by getting over the house mic and basically patronizing them or adopting a sort of superior attitude. I don't really care what position in the company these wrestlers are. Yes, they're performance center athletes. Yes, you can say they're kind of towards the bottom of the pile, but treat them like human beings still. I think generally this says a lot about about WWE's reported perceived attitude during this whole lockdown time, this relentless, the show must go on attitude, and a very uncompromising attitude as well from various things that we've heard, from saying that, you know, wrestlers won't be punished for not be willing to travel to shows and that sort of thing, and then taking the IC title off of Sami Zayn. It just all seems a bit uncomfortable when you add all of these little stories together. But then again, this is just one report, so I guess it has to be taken with a pinch of salt. But would you be surprised if this turned out to be true? Because, I mean, I certainly wouldn't. Next up, on last night's WWE Backstage, a certain veteran of WWE revealed that he will be returning to Monday Night Raw next week, and he was none other than Christian. Christian implied that he is going to be talking about the upcoming best match ever at Backlash, the rematch, the normal singles match between Edge and Randy Orton. Obviously, Christian was a long-time tag partner of Edge. They were one of the most legendary tag teams of all time. It makes sense to involve him, I suppose. But I'm wondering, in what capacity are we going to see Christian? I think it could be one of two things. First of all, if you've been watching Raw in recent weeks, they've had a couple of legends on talking about what their prediction is for the match. So Ric Flair said via video link that he thinks that Randy Orton's going to win, and then this week Shawn Michaels, again via video, said that he thinks that Randy Orton is going to lose and that Edge is going to be able to pick up the victory. So Christian could be appearing in this kind of capacity. Yes, you could say he's not a legend of the stature of like Ric Flair or HBK, but he is more relevant to this storyline because of his history with Edge, and to be fair, his history with Randy Orton as well. They had a great feud in the early 2010s. So it could be that. It could be an appearance not in person, not in the arena itself, but via a video with Christian just giving his prediction as to who is going to win the match at Backlash. But on the other hand, it could be a physical appearance, and if it is, I think Christian could be getting beaten up, basically. The reason for that is that obviously Randy Orton takes no prisoners when he's in these sort of feuds. He battered Matt Hardy during the first part of the feud with Edge. He even RKO'd Beth Phoenix, Edge's wife. So I think that if Christian turns up in person, he could be getting physically involved in a way to escalate this angle heading into that match at Backlash. Either way, it'll be great to see Christian again. I always find him, I think, one of the more genuinely likable wrestlers whose personality seems to really shine through on the mic. He's obviously Captain Charisma and all the rest of it, but when you strip away all the overt wrestling personality and everything, I think he just seems like a decent guy. Christian is, of course, a regular guest on WWE Backstage, but he was not the only person who was on the show the other day. He was joined by, well, semi-regular, I suppose, analysts CM Punk and Booker T as well. And both Punk and Booker had very interesting things to say about this ongoing angle that was introduced on last week's SmackDown involving Jeff Hardy and an apparent DUI. Renee Young introduced this by mentioning that Jeff Hardy had fully embraced this recent storyline about his alleged hit and run on Elias, even though it probably is going to turn out that it was a heelish plot to frame Jeff Hardy, given his history, his well-documented history in real life outside of wrestling storylines, with issues including DUIs and public drunkenness and that sort of thing. And CM Punk made a very important point and said that somebody's sobriety is a fragile thing and it should be championed in different ways. He said it felt like someone should have gone out in front of this and not let the storyline happen. So Punk is just there laying his cards on the table saying, I do not agree with this storyline. Christian, for what it's worth, agreed with Punk, who also pointed out that even if Jeff Hardy himself says he's okay with this storyline, it's probably better to stay away from it. And Booker T agreed as well. Booker brought up a storyline from WCW with similar themes and just didn't think it was something that should be played around with. They both agreed, both Booker and CM Punk, that these storylines really are never worth it in the long run. They never seem to pay off as WWE probably imagine they will. Now obviously Backstage exists in a slightly different realm to the rest of WWE's programming in that superstars on the show, or former superstars, often just openly criticize what's going on. But I think rarely do they do so as unanimously as this. All three wrestlers on the show, Punk, Christian and Booker T, all said, look, we don't agree with this storyline, we think it's distasteful, we think it's probably not going to be handled responsibly, and we think that even if Jeff Hardy's okay with it, they should probably still stay away from it. I think it's quite a damning indictment of the storyline on Friday's SmackDown, which, to be fair, was a very good episode, but it just had that blemish at the start, this whole Jeff Hardy thing, which was treated as a shoot. You know, it obviously wasn't, but it was meant to be like, this has really happened outside the arena, and it's I found it a bit distasteful as well, to be honest. And finally, let's talk about Kurt Angle, who recently did an interview with Sports Illustrated where he talked about various things, the two key points being the reason that he turned down this recently reported offer to manage Matt Riddle, and also the reason why he's not fully 100% ruling out a return to the ring. Let's start off with the Matt Riddle thing at first. So Angle responded to that question by saying, WWE offered me a job to manage Matt Riddle. Unfortunately, I turned it down. I just have so much going on with my business, Physically Fit Nutrition, and I need to make sure it succeeds before I do anything else. So it's no case of like any heat between Riddle and Angle or anything like that. It's just a simple case of Angle having his priorities in order and wanting to focus on his own business before, I suppose, getting too involved in WWE once again. And yes, there was a connection with Riddle on last week's NXT where Angle was the special guest referee in that match between Riddle and Timothy Thatcher in that cage pit thing. And I suppose that was going to lead on to Angle managing Riddle, but unfortunately for fans of Angle and Riddle, that doesn't seem to be the case. Although, to be fair, is it unfortunate for Riddle fans? Because he's very charismatic on his own, and I would suggest probably doesn't need a mouthpiece, even one of the legendary stature of Kurt Angle. And then talking about his retirement, obviously Angle retired at WrestleMania in that match against Baron Corbin, which wasn't received well because everyone thought it should have been against a far more apt opponent. Obviously Corbin just won the match clean, and it was a little bit of a deflating ending for fans of Angle, one of the greatest of all time. But of course, it's professional wrestling, and we know by now that retirements, no matter how final they may seem, do not always tell the full story, and wrestlers can always return after these apparent last matches ever, such as most famously Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels. Angle responded to this by saying, I'm almost 100% I won't wrestle again, almost he says, but if I did, that's the direction I would have went. I imagine WWE was going to go with me managing Riddle and then eventually probably having a match between the two of us. He was then asked whether he'd be open to wrestling again if he feels he can do it, and he says, right now, I'm not open to it. Could my mind be changed? Yes, for two reasons. One, I'm working on my business and I've been doing a lot of rehab on my body, trying to get myself back to where I'm able to live a healthy lifestyle. Angle then talked about his injuries. I've been so banged up, my neck, my back, but I'm making improvements. If I get to the point where I feel I can do it, then I'll probably do it. But right now, I have to focus on my body. So the two reasons for Angle stepping away and saying that he's almost 100% ever going to wrestle again are one, his business, and two, simply put, his body and injuries that he's accumulated over the years. My recommended match for this video is going to be not Angle versus Baron Corbin, surprisingly. It's going to be another of Angle's WrestleMania matches, the one against Shawn Michaels. A wonderful match. Check it out if you haven't seen it already. Thank you very much as well for watching this video. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments section down below. Stay safe out there, stay positive, and I'll see you very soon.